Hi, I'm Kristen Oakes White. Thank you for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Agriculture, the only TV show bringing Louisiana farmers and consumers together every week. My partner, Avery Davidson, will join us in just a few minutes. Well, October 12th is Election Day in Louisiana, and the big race on the ballot is for governor. There are 6 candidates running, but only 3 are polling in the double digits. Governor John Bel Edwards, a Democrat, is vying for a second term to lead Louisiana. His 2 main opponents are Republican 5th District Congressman Abraham and Republican businessman Eddie Rispone. In the interview we brought you last week, Governor Edwards pointed out his work to protect agricultural tax exemptions over the last 4 years and touted his background in ag.
I grew up in Amite in northern Tangipahoa Parish. My dad owned a dairy farm. We ran the dairy farm, but I also worked at some of the produce farms in the area during the summer and worked really hard at that, and those days were hot. But it just gave me a real appreciation for a good, honest day's work, but also the quality of life that you get when you're in the agricultural arena, whether it's dairying or produce farms or whatever. And it really helped to shape me in terms of work ethic, but also, again, my appreciation for what farmers go through, because it is tough. I mean, you got to deal with commodity prices. You got to deal with the prices of all the inputs. You got to deal with the weather, and you don't have much control over any of those things. And so it really is a tough but great way to live, and it's an honest way to live, and it does so much good. I mean, $11 billion is the economic impact of agriculture in the state of Louisiana. I mean, just think about that. That is absolutely huge what they contribute. But they contribute at least as much to the quality of life, the way of life that we have enjoyed here in Louisiana.
Congressman Abraham is Louisiana's only representative who sits on the House Agriculture Committee. Aside from being a pilot, veterinarian, and a medical doctor, Congressman Abraham is also a farmer.
I grew up on literally the same piece of property that I live now. And Diane and I have raised our children, and certainly our grandchildren come over and spend time with us, and we're very grateful for that. I've been honored as a Louisianan to serve this great state as a soldier, a farmer, a pilot, a veterinarian, and a medical doctor, and certainly that veterinary degree, working on those large animals, going out to those farms, going out to those ranches. I know, but a lot of people don't know, how hard of a life that is and how hard it is to make a living at it.
You're still involved in farming.
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about what your son-in-law and you still grow.
Look, on the farm this year we have cotton. We had corn last year, we've had soybeans, so we rotate those crops, and it depends on the market. Farming is tough right now. We understand the margins are very small, production costs are still very high. People tend to think that farmers have an easy life. They don't. It's very difficult and it's very stressful.
Now, since our last show, we were able to connect with Eddie Rispone. Avery Davidson sat down to find out where this candidate, who built a career in construction, stands on agricultural issues.
Mr. Rispone, thank you so much for joining us here on This Week in Louisiana Agriculture. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Avery. I appreciate that.
Well, you're running for governor. What made you decide to say, you know what, I've had a successful business, I've gone forward with that, but now I want to step into the public arena?
Yeah, let me start with this. I'll give you a little quick bio of myself, you know. I grew up in North Baton Rouge, where Standard Oil established themselves, I think in 1909. And so I grew up in a blue-collar family of 9 in a 1,000-square-foot home, attic fan, 1 bathroom. At one point, there were 6 children in there, and I always tell people my mother was a saint. And my dad worked at Standard Oil, eventually became humble and all that. And he, you know, so I knew at a very early age if I wanted spending money or transportation or to go to college, I'd have to have a job. So people say, well, how does someone with your station in life, this stage in life, with 24 grandchildren decide to run for governor? And what happens when John Bel got elected, you know, of course I was disappointed. But what happened is that in the first session, he tried to cut the budget or defund the scholarship program that allows low-income children to escape failing schools and go to a private school. And it just really got to me. You know, it bothered me a lot because I spent a lot of time trying to help children get educated. So God knew this was on my heart. And so it got to the point when I was around my children, I would feel, I don't want to say guilty, but I was not doing what God wanted me to do, help these children in a bigger way. And so I went back to my wife and explained that to her. And I asked her, I said, would you mind praying on that again? And she did. And she came back to me several weeks later. I don't remember, it was 5 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever. And she said, okay, I'm in. I understand. I know what we have to do. And peace came over both of us. And, you know, I tell people when you listen to God and you answer His request, you do have peace. Not that this is not easy. It is a challenge to do this, especially at this stage in life. But we're both at peace with it, and we've committed to do what God wants us to do. And that's to create a future for our children and grandchildren and all of our children and grandchildren in Louisiana. And we deserve that. They deserve that. You know, we should be number one in the South when it comes to jobs and opportunities is a big part of that. And that's what we're here for, to turn this state around. And really, it boiled down to our faith. That's why we're in this race. And people ask me that all the time, and I tell them that's the truth. I'm not afraid to say that, you know. It's not an ego trip. Believe me, it's not an ego trip. This is trying to do what He wants us to do.
Tell me a little bit about your connections with agriculture. We were talking earlier about, you know, you do have some pretty close ties.
You know, I would say this. My grandparents, are both sides, my mother and father's parents, were strawberry farmers in Tangipahoa Parish, Amite actually. And so my dad grew up doing that with him and his brothers and sisters. My mother did the same thing. I mean, they worked out there. So we used to go and be a part of that. And I learned very early age how to pick strawberries and pack them and bring them to the rail station to send them up to Chicago and then all the I guess you call them the fruits and stuff. I mean, the bell peppers and things would go to New Orleans most of the time. So my dad always had a garden, so I did those things as well. And I learned those things and work in the garden, follow my grandfather around with a mule and everything else. So it's close to me. It's in our family, the farming side of it. And then just recently, you know, I guess it's been about 6 years ago, I bought some property, timber property. And so I really have learned a lot about that part of the agriculture and what it means and what it, you know, how you plan, you thin the forest and you have to mark the timber. I also learned that, you know, you don't make what you think you're going to make on the timber, and the product goes up and down, and it takes a while. And we've also planted quite a few acres, maybe about 200 acres of soybeans and sometimes corn, you know, for self-consumption for our wild game. So I've learned about the planting and the spraying and what it means to pay for the seed and the fertilizer and all the fuel. And
You brought up about buying the feed, the seed, the fertilizer, those sorts of things. Currently, those are all exempt from state sales tax. We had a bunch of people looking at those ag exemptions whenever there was a budget crisis in the state. What would you do as governor to help protect those ag exemptions?
We will protect those. I was visiting with Brent Alon, and he was one of the senators that stepped in there and said, guys, let me explain something to y'all. And so he's the one that kind of led that charge to get that off the table, to make sure we protect that. You got to keep us competitive. I mean, our farmers have to be competitors with the rest of the country as well. So that's the way I look at everything. Louisiana is blessed with great natural resources. And so we have to do everything possible to keep us competitive with the rest of the country. And that's one reason why I want to have the limited constitution, the Constitutional Convention, is to make sure we're competitive. You know, rewrite it and make sure that we're competitive with the rest of the country.
Let's talk about infrastructure and rural roads, bridges, and broadband. What would you do as governor to shore up that rural infrastructure?
Well, it's all infrastructure. It's really the whole infrastructure of Louisiana. The roads and bridges are in bad shape, and we have not prioritized it properly. And as governor, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to quit spending tax dollars, gasoline tax dollars, on salaries and benefits. We're going to put that back in the roads and bridges like we told the people would do. And so that comes to about $130+ million a year. And so with that dollars, you can parlay it with federal dollars, and we could be looking at $300 to $400 million a year right off the bat.
Well, I know a lot of us have been watching TV and seeing the ads, and you know, lots of political ads sometimes don't say the nicest things about people, but I want to make sure this interview ends on a positive note. What are a couple of positive things you could say about the other your opponents in this race?
I would say this about both of them. This is John Bell Edwards and Congressman Abraham. Both of them are good family men. Both of them have been married to the same lady for a long time. Both of them are like me. They're married over their heads. We're very blessed. And so that's a big deal. They both love their families, and they're solid citizens when they come to their families. Obviously, in John Bell's case, he is totally different when it comes to policy. He is a tax and spend liberal career politician, as I call it. Government can fix everything. You just keep growing government, raising taxes. And so, but I know that that's sincere about him. That's just him. You know, he's a good family man, and you have to respect that. He's also very personable as well, as you probably have already known. Congressman Abraham obviously is the same way. Good quality person, lives, you know, good family man, loves his family and grandchildren like I do. You know, he's been a hard-working person all his life as well. You know, I think he's more of a policy person than he is someone to step in and take over a $30 billion operation. And so I look at it that way. You know, I'm looking at one is policies and one's, you know, different policies, and one has similar policies. But there's only one person here that started a business with 3 and has almost $400 million in revenues, and really has the skill set to take on a $30 billion operation and turn it around. And then someone that's not beholden to special interests, that has the backbone to do something different, similar to what's happened with Donald Trump with the United States. You know, he just gets in there and makes things happen. And that's why I'm in this race, you know, the future for Louisiana, for our children and grandchildren, so they'll stay here and be proud to call Louisiana home, you know. That's it. I mean, this is the way it's happening right now.
Well, Mr. Rispone, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us and spend a little time and let our members get to know you.
I appreciate you having me. I really do. You do well, doing well here. Appreciate it.
Now, the governor's race is not the only one you'll find on your ballot. Incumbent Jen Donnellan is facing a fellow Republican and insurance agent, Tim Temple, in the race for Commissioner of Insurance. Commissioner of Agriculture and Forestry, Dr. Mike Strain, is running for a 4th term. He's facing 3 challengers who are Democrats and 1 Republican. There are also 4 constitutional amendments on the ballot and a host of local elections, so be sure to get out there and vote. Again, Election Day is October 12th, and you can see your sample ballot on the Louisiana Secretary of State's website. We'll post a link to that on our website at twilatv.org. Still to come on Twila, Carl Wiggers digs up a pretty sweet story in Acadia Parish where this year is totally different for a crop there. But first, did you know cotton can be brown? Tammy Arender tells us about one grower keeping this heritage strain alive. Stay with us.